Hey guys, welcome back to Sockets and Sideburns. Today we're going to be changing the alternator drive belt on Clara. She's a 1.2 16 valve Renault Clio Mk2. Now changing the alternator belt on the 1.2 engines in these vehicles is all the same whether they're 16 valve or 8 valve and whether they have air conditioning or not, as the air conditioning and alternator belts are separate on these engines. Let's get it done. First we'll pop the bonnet up. So on these Clio 1.2s, the alternator and its drive belt is living down here with tons of access to get this drive belt off. Now I'm going to show you a couple of ways to retension this belt when we put our new one on, including the correct way according to Renault, which is using a Hertz reading, which we're going to get using a smartphone app. Now that's the way I'm going to recommend that you do it. However, I'm also going to show you how to use a Krikit gauge on this belt, which is going to measure the actual belt tension in pounds. Another way, which I don't recommend as it relies on the previous belt having had been tensioned correctly when it was installed, is you can just make a mark across the alternator onto a fixed point, so its mounting bracket, and just reposition the alternator to the same place when you fit the new belt. So as I say, although I don't recommend using this marking method as a way to retension the new belt, I am going to mark it across, and I recommend you do, just to get it in the ballpark area for when you're setting the tension on the new belt so that you're not adjusting for a long time. So if we just mark across the alternator itself onto the bracket, which is a fixed point, just make a line across that you can line back up. To remove the belt, first we need to slacken off these two bolts. First we've got this through bolt at the bottom of the alternator. Now as a through bolt, its threads are exposed on the other side, so just give them a check over, and if they're crusty, give them a wire brush and a spray with some penetrating oil. This bottom bolt's a 16mm. We only need to slacken them off, as I say. And now just loosen off this top 10mm bolt as well. And then we can just push our alternator back, which should take the tension off the belt, and then just slip it off the alternator pulley and then off of the crankshaft pulley. That is really, really worn out, absolutely full of cracks, and my personal favourite is this big one on the back. Now at the bare minimum really, you should be changing these alternator belts at least when you do the cam belt. This car's coming up for its second cam belt. It's done over 100k, but if I had to guess, judging by the state of this one and the fact that we've got a Renault stamp on the front of the belt there, I would say this is still probably its original alternator belt. Now I have seen firsthand one of these alternator belts on these cars, this 1.2 engine, snap when the engine was running, get behind the crankshaft pulley and take out the cam belt at the same time. Absolutely riddled with cracks. So while you've got your alternator belt off, it's a really good opportunity to give your alternator pulley a spin, listen for any grinding or noise from the bearing, and also just give it a wiggle, check for any free play. And before you fit your new belt, just check in these grooves, make sure there's no damage on the pulley at all or any debris sitting in there. Okay, these belts should have markings on them to help you identify them, get your new one. I believe on all these Renault Clio 1.2s, 8 valves and 16 valves for the alternator belt, it should be the same, but do check the markings on yours to find the correct replacement. This one is a 3PK 740, and all that means is that it's a 3-rib multi-V belt for automotive use, and it's 740 millimeters long. Okay, slip our new drive belt on now. The easiest way to do this is to get it around the crankshaft pulley first, engaged into all the pulley grooves like that, and then just slip it around the alternator pulley. It will take a bit of persuasion to slip over. There we go. And then just check that it's engaged around both with all of your ribs seated into the pulley grooves, and just put a little tension onto it just by bringing the alternator forward. I'll just run my finger back around the edge here, make sure that's securely seated on the crankshaft pulley, definitely engaged properly. And we can see quite obviously that it's properly on the alternator pulley as well. Now we can tension this up. Okay, now we need to tension this drive belt up. To do this, we need to pivot the alternator back away from the engine again. You need a pry bar or something similar, and just get it between the alternator and the alternator bracket and on a nice sturdy part of the alternator so you don't damage it. And you can just push the alternator back, have your 10mm ready to hand just to nip up that bolt, and then you can start checking the tension from there. So we'll try that as a starting point. So we're going to see where we are with the tension now. I'm going to be using this Easy Tension app by Hutchinson, which you can download off the iTunes or Google Play Store. I've seen these apps compared against the proper belt tension tester tools, which are over £500, and they always come out very close. Just make sure that your microphone port is clear of any dirt or anything like that, and make sure that you follow the app manufacturer's instructions properly to get good results with these. So with this one, you just click frequency meter and this red button at the bottom to start measuring. You need to keep any other noises down to a minimum while you're doing this, and pluck the belt in the center of its longest span. We'll just remeasure that quick. So we got 295, I think, 297 and 300 and 298. So a little less because it needs to be 260. Okay, we just need to ease off a little bit then. Just take the tension of the belt ready so it doesn't slip completely out of position, and then just ease off that 10mm. And we'll just release a little bit and then tighten that 10mm back down again and recheck. $271, 273, 269, I think one more. 272. So just a tiny bit less. And we'll check that now. $260 and $260 again. I'm happy with that. Okay, so although that's bang on, I'm also going to now just check it quick with this Krikit gauge, which is going to measure actual tension on the belt by using belt deflection under a certain amount of force, whatever this clicks at. On the instructions for this gauge, for this kind of setup, which is here, crankshaft, pulley and an alternator, they're suggesting 70 pounds for the gauge to go to. So we'll check that now as a second backup, but you could use this as your main tension method if you didn't want to use your smartphone for a hertz reading, but I'm just going to be using this as a backup. Set the gauge in the middle of the belt run and just slow steady pressure down and check what that reads as. It's where the lever intersects the gauge itself, and it's about 60 pounds. So I think that'll do. Okay, so with the hertz reading of 260 and the Krikit gauge reading at 60 pounds, I'm happy with that belt tension now. So we just need to tighten the 2 bolts on the alternator up. This bottom 16mm bolt is torqued up to 50 Nm. Okay, and this top 10mm bolt needs torquing up to 25 Nm. Right, so with that all done, we'll give the car a quick run now and listen out for any abnormal noises like whines or screeches that might indicate that the belt is either over or under tightened. After we've given it a little run in and the belt's had an opportunity to seat into the pulleys, we'll just check the tension again one more time to make sure that it hasn't changed. If it has, we'll just tension it back up again. Okay, sounding good so far. Belt looks good. You'll just make sure that you've not got any strange noises coming from it, any grinding, any squeaking. Just let it run for a minute and then shut it off and just check the tension. Right, now that belt's had a chance to bed in, we'll recheck the tension. 255. And 255 again. If your belt does read out of spec when you recheck it after it's been bedded in, then just slack off the bolts again, retension it, and don't forget to torque up the bolts when you're finished and have got the right tension again. It's just going to decrease a little bit after it beds in, but only if it goes out of spec do you need to retension it. And we'll check it with the Krikit gauge as well, just to be sure. And we've got 65 pounds, and the recommendation with the instructions with this gauge is 70 for a belt like this. So I'm chuffed to bits with that. Right, drop the bonnet, and we're done. Right then, job finished. Don't forget to leave a like if you've enjoyed this video or it's helped you out at all. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more content in the future. You can find me on Instagram @SocketsAndSideburns. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next video.